Hey, it's Donna Rudowitz, and welcome to today's training call. Today, we're going to be talking about the third agreement in Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. And just to recap where we've been, so this way it will give us a basis of understanding and development within ourselves. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. The second agreement was don't take anything personally. And now we're going to be moving in the third agreement, which is don't make assumptions. And as human beings, we have tendencies to do a few things when we're looking at a situation or we're connecting with people. Things we tend to do as human beings is we'll assume, we'll make assumptions about a person, place, or thing. We may generalize what's going on, and we may also embellish the situation. And that goes to fact for what's going on in the moment, as well as when we look back at a situation, we look back as a memory. And here's the problem that we encounter is that when we're kind of in process with these tendencies, when we're generalizing, we're assuming, or we're embellishing something, the problem is that we really believe that they are true. And we assume we know what others are thinking, and we assume we know what others are feeling based upon how we would think or feel in that situation. And then if that person, place, or thing doesn't respond in a way that meets how you feel about it, we then take it personally. And there's an interesting fact that I want everyone to understand, and this is science. This is not just woo-woo stuff, but this is science, that over 50% of our memories and how we remember the past isn't even true. That we, in our brain, the way our brain functions and the way that we are designed as a human being is we will recreate in our mind. We think we have a very clear, accurate picture of a memory, but we don't, because what we did in that moment, when that event took place in the past, we sort of took a snapshot of an emotional picture of what happened. And in that picture, we think we saw everything, but we didn't. So what we tend to do is we go back to, we'll assume maybe someone was there when they really may not have been, or maybe someone responded in a way that we thought they did and maybe they didn't. Maybe we generalized, maybe we minimalized, maybe we embellished, maybe we under-embellished. But over 50% of our memories are not true. And in the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz states, and he really believes, that all sadness and drama that we've lived in our lives was rooted in making assumptions rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. So we're just going to read that again. All sadness and drama we've lived in our lives was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. That's a pretty deep statement, but there's so much truth to it, right? If you really think about it, if you think about all of the disagreements that you've had in your life, if you think about all of the toxicity feelings and emotions and the poisons that you're feeling that are spewing back and forth both in words and emotions, that sadness and that drama, a lot of it is because we made an assumption about something or someone. And a lot of it is because we took things personally and we didn't allow ourselves to take a moment to respond to something where we more reacted to something. And that we really do create our own hell or heaven. And we really do either spread the poison by talking about things or by remaining stuck in the past, or we actually spread grace through the release of the past and through talking about our future. And the stories that we create that keep us tied to the past, and the stories that we create that keep us anchored to sadness and drama, we keep those stories alive, and we keep those injustices happening again and again and again because we keep talking about it. And what we talk about, we bring about. So there's a simple recipe here. If you don't want to continue tolerating things in your life, one simple thing you can begin to do is just refuse to talk about it. For instance, I'm going to give you a very simple example. When I feel a cold coming on, and now I feel it, I get, I'll get the stuffy nose, I'll get a little bit of the tightness in the chest, and maybe the aches and pains of the body. So physically, I'm experiencing my body, coming down with a cold. But I will refuse to talk about it. I will refuse to kind of say out loud that I'm getting sick, or that I have a cold, or that I feel so terrible. I may say it haphazardly, maybe once or twice, but when I consciously become aware of it, and what I do is I actually reverse it, is that I am well, and I do the actions to heal my body. I may do warm water with tea and honey. I may give myself a little more time to rest that day. I may take a decongestant, or I have immune boosters that I may take. I may decide to eat healthy food or make a chicken soup. So I'm not ignoring my physical symptoms, but I just refuse to talk about it. Because what I know is the more I talk about something is the more I bring up something. And then now, if I want to talk about it, man, I could probably bring my whole family into it. And I could call my friends and be like, oh man, I feel so sick. And if in the past, the friends that I used to have who loved drama, maybe like, oh yeah, I get it, I feel so sick. And then before you know it, that's all you're talking about is how sick you feel, and how hard work was, and how everything went wrong that day, and how you're so achy, and blah, 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 blah. Right? I think you get the picture. And the truth lies in that we may not know yet how to communicate your need for clarity. So instead of asking for clarity, or instead of asking for what you feel, need, or want, the feeling of being embarrassed, or the feeling of being ashamed, or the feeling of being rejected by that person for asking what you need or want, that feeling is greater. So what you end up doing is, instead of getting clarity, you assume. Right? The pain of feeling embarrassed is greater than the pain of finding the real truth. So you protect yourselves. And how do we protect ourselves? We protect ourselves by assuming. And as a human, we see what we want to see, and we hear what we want to hear. We don't necessarily perceive things as they are. We perceive things as we want them to be. We have a habit of creating a reality in our mind, of creating a dream with no basis in reality whatsoever. We literally make things up in our imagination and create stories that have no basis in reality whatsoever. For instance, let's say someone at work forgot to include you on an email. For whatever reason, you were left off on this email, and you have a belief that you are being left out as it is. And now this email had to do with a celebration for a coworker that's going out. And now in your mind, you begin the story of, there's a reason why they didn't invite me, that they don't want me to be there, that they're trying to reject me out of the group, that this was purposeful, that there's a reason behind it. And you create this whole story. There's no basis in reality for this. It's all a story. And what you find out is, after the fact, you find out that it simply was a mistake. That it wasn't only you that was left off for some reason. There was the person who was sending the email didn't use the right email string, and there was a few people left off, and it had nothing to do with you. It was a sheer mistake. Instead of getting up and going to the person and saying, hey, listen, I heard or I noticed that this email went around. I didn't see my name on the list. Not a problem if I'm not invited. I just wanted to know, that would be clarity. But the pain of feeling embarrassed, or the pain of feeling rejected, will prevent you from doing that. And then you assume and you create the stories. And from that one experience, you can make an assumption. So for instance, I'm going to give you another experience. Let's say you go into Starbucks and the person ahead of you smiles at you and offers to buy you a cup of coffee. And of course you're like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And you take that cup of coffee and you're so happy. From that one experience, you can make an assumption, right? And when that one experience and the little bit of information you have, you can create a whole fantasy. And you're invested in this fantasy. You're invested in this dream because you really want it to be real. And you assume that this person, maybe let's say it's a man and you're in the midst of, going through this personal development work and you're looking for a perfect partner and you see this person with this woman that he's with and you assume that he's this great person, that he's a great husband, that he's a great father, and look how great he is, and that the men that you've attracted in the past don't often think of you or they don't treat you right. And now look at this person, how well he treats, he must treat his whole family so well. Only to find out that this man, you don't know, he could be a domestic violence person. This man could be an avid drug user. You have no idea, or an alcoholic. He could beat his family. He could be the most horrible person in the world. But in that moment, he smiled to you and bought you a cup of coffee and you made a whole story about it. The truth is, when we make assumptions about a person, place, or thing, the only thing that we're inviting into our life is problems, right? When we think another person should behave a certain way or another person should act a certain way, and if they don't, we go into the mode of, well, they should have known. I can't believe they didn't know this, because we're assuming that they should be acting a certain way. They should be behaving a certain way. And when they don't, then what are we left with? We're left with a bag of problems because we've created a story about it. That other person's going on with their life. They could care less. They're happy as a clam. They're going on doing their thing. But we're left holding this emotional bag of dynamite because we're left stewing about it. And let's bring this real, guys, okay? Let's bring this down to us, to this Divorcing Gracefully and Beyond group here. That we are in this group to create the best relationship with ourselves. And many of us would like to have, when ready, that relationship with our perfect partner, with our soulmate. So let's use an example in our case. So let's say in our case, when we meet someone, right, and we really are connected to this person, and we assume that they want the same type of relationship that we do. And here's the bottom line truth to that, is when we assume and we make assumptions in relationships, the only thing that making assumptions leads to is fighting, is difficulties, and misunderstandings. So here are a few assumptions that we'll make about our partner. We'll assume that we know what they want and what's important to them. We will also assume that they know what we want and that they understand what's important to us. We may assume that they understand us and how we think. We may assume that we don't necessarily have to communicate what it is we want, that they should know. For instance, if you like flowers and you're having a bad day, they should know to buy you flowers. Or on your birthday, they should know. You shouldn't have to tell them. They should know that flowers are important to you. We also assume that we know their innermost needs and desires. And we assume that they should know our innermost needs and desires. See, we assume that people see life from the same lens we do. We assume that others feel, think, and act the same way we do. We assume others judge the way we judge. And we assume that our inner critic and their inner critic are the same. That inner critic beats us up at the same way that their inner critic beats them up. Relationships with ourselves and the building of a relationship with ourselves, as well as the building of a relationships with others, don't fail because they didn't have the potential to be amazing relationships. And this is something I just want to dig in here for a moment. There are billions of people in this world. All of us have multiple soulmates. We'd like to think there's the one, and there really is. There's that one that you really could connect to. But to be honest with you, there's multiple people that are your soulmates, and each one of those relationships could be beautiful relationships. So when you connect with someone, it's not because they didn't have the potential or the relationship didn't have the potential to be an amazing relationship for you. They fail because of unrealistic expectations and assumptions and taking things personally and not being impeccable to our word. They fail because we think that we're coming to the table a certain way, and people should meet our needs in a certain way, or we should meet their needs in a certain way, very rigid. And only to come to find out that you can't change anybody, right? The only person that you could change is yourself. Others will only change because they want to, and that's the only way someone will change. You could be an influence, and you could be a guide, and you could be an inspiration for someone else, absolutely. But you can never make someone else change. And in relationships, this is one of the biggest struggles. Because when love is present, and when you're truly in a loving state, both with yourself and with your partner, you don't need to justify love. It's either there or it's not. And real love is accepting people for exactly who they are without trying to change them. And this includes you. Even right now in this moment, is loving yourself exactly the way you are in this moment, unapologetically, authentically, and vulnerably, but also allowing to say to yourself, I love me where I am. I love me now. And I know for me what my growth path is. And I know that I could, as each day goes by and the work that I do and the work that I invest in myself, I'm going to be growing into this a bigger and greater version of myself. And each and every day, as I grow into this greater version, it's just the next level up for me and the next level up for me. And as of right now, though, I love me as me. And if you're saying to yourself, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could say I truly love myself because I feel like I'm broken, or I feel like I need to fix things, or I feel like I need to do this first, then that's an invitation for you to get clarity. And that's an invitation to not just assume that's the truth, but to dig deep down inside and get clarity. Because if you're feeling that, then the people, places, and things that you're attracting in your life are going to match that, which is what we don't want. Learning to love yourself doesn't mean that you're perfect, because we will never be perfect. We can't be perfect. I think the closest thing on earth that ever has lived or walked on earth that in being perfect is Jesus Christ. And none of us certainly are God, and none of us certainly aren't him. So even though your jeans are ripped, you've got some mud on your face, you've been through battles, even though you may not be operating exactly the way that you want to, or that you may be reacting to things versus responding to things still, and even though you may be crying, on the couch for a little while over the weekend, or, you may be having, kind of going through that supermarket and picking up that ice cream because there's still some depression in there. Like, even though these are things that you're dealing with, they're not you. They don't define you. And you can love you in spite of those, because that's what makes you you. That's what makes you human. If you didn't have these experiences and you didn't have these reactions or being able to respond to our environment, I'd be worried about you. Your job is to love you. Your job is to be you. Your job is to show up with no false image. Because that's the worst. The worst thing we could possibly do is enter into a relationship with ourselves or with another person acting in a certain way. Like, maybe, pretending we like things that we really don't like. Or let's say we're really not a night person, but this person we meet happens to be a night person. And you say, okay, for the first, I'm just going to go out. I'll go out with him at night because that's all, and he's a late guy. But meanwhile, you're a breakfast person. And by 9 o'clock, you're in bed. By the way, that's me. I'm an early morning person. So you could sustain it for a little while, and then the relationship begins to grow. And then after, 6 months or so, you just can't do it anymore. And now all of a sudden you're just like, come on, can't we do breakfast instead? And he's looking at you going, who is this person? You're not, it's like a bait and switch, right? Because you didn't show up. You showed up as a false image. You need to show up beautifully you. If you don't wear makeup during the day, then don't wear makeup during the day. If you're a morning person, then operate in the morning. If you're night, operate at night. If you don't like to watch a certain show, then don't show up watching it. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. Embrace the beauty and strength of who you are. And also be proud of the struggle and the grit that you're facing in the moment, because that's what's developing you into the treasure. Think about a diamond. A diamond just doesn't fall out of the sky beautifully perfect. Number one, there is no perfect diamond, right? Everyone has a flaw. Each one has, even if it's the slightest of flaw, each diamond has a flaw. And a diamond is created from force, right? From the coal, from the weight of the force is how a diamond is created. And you are a diamond. You are a jewel. And the experiences that you've been through and the pain that you've been through and the struggle that you've been through or that you are going through in this moment are all here to develop you to your greater self. And you can either buckle into and making assumptions that there's something that your life is or isn't, and buckle into it and be addicted to the past. Or you could feel the pain and acknowledge that you're still going to live, that there's air, that you're getting the air, and that you're going to do what you can to move forward. And you're not going to assume anything about your life or someone else's life. That you're going to ask questions, you're going to seek clarity, you're going to be open to hearing. If you really want clarity, be open to hearing the answer. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You could be open to hearing the answer and then having a conversation around it. And if you don't understand something, it's okay. But ask the reason behind it. Ask for clarity. And what we need to understand is functioning the way we've been functioning up until this point of our lives. We've developed habits and deep-rooted habits, at this point, subconscious habits. And you may not even be aware how much you're doing this, assuming or taking things personally. You may or may not be. And the first step into breaking this habit is becoming aware. Becoming aware of where you're making assumptions, becoming aware of how and where it's impacting your life. And then little by little, you're going to learn and you're going to begin to ask a question here or ask a question there. Little by little, you're going to show up in your authentic self and not be afraid or worried or have any fear of what someone might think of you for gaining clarity. And little by little, you're going to get and set those boundaries. And when you do this over and over and over again, you're going to form a new habit. The old habit will just fade away and you're going to form a new habit. And when you stand in the truth, when you stand in not making the assumption and you stand in the truth and you're ready, willing, and able to see the truth, to hear the truth, and understand that you see life through your lens and your map of life, and that others see life through their lens and through their map of life, that you have stories, they have stories, that sometimes you tell the truth about yourself and to yourself, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes other people say the truth about themselves, and sometimes they don't. When you stand in truth and you lose the story and you lose the assumption, you also lose the need to convince, to defend, or to justify anything, because you just are. It gives you the permission to just be. And think about all of that energy that has been flowing in and out of you with all of the chaos that's around you and all of the stories that we tell ourselves and making assumptions and taking things personally and just the memories that aren't necessarily really as accurate as we thought they were. When we could release that energy and actually harness it back to us, can you imagine the peace that you're going to receive? Could you imagine the energy that you could create to attracting what you really want in life and the people you really want to be around and the miracles you really want to experience? It's like almost a quantum leap. Because guys, listen, I'm not here so you could take baby steps. We're going to take baby steps in the beginning. We have to. It just is the way it is. And there's going to be sometimes we're going to take a step back, and we do need to take baby steps. But I am here to give you the permission to take your quantum leap I am here to give you the permission that you can win in this thing called life, and that it's not selfish, and that it's okay if you show up and you don't get the gold medal the first time. It's okay if you show up and you don't get the bronze medal or the silver medal. It's actually okay if you don't get any medal, because when it doesn't matter the medal, it matters that you're willing to take that move in life. It matters that you're willing to take, if not a little step. And then I am here to give you the permission that you have every right to take that quantum leap. You don't have to stay stuck in perpetuating patterns and habits for weeks, months, years. You know now we don't necessarily need to understand exactly why things have happened in our past and the reasons behind it, and that 50% of what we remember isn't even accurate. Let's just leave it there. Let's drive all that energy into the moment of the day. And if nothing else, if you can't even get into understanding what you really want out of life just yet because it's not really clear, that's okay. Bring all of your attention to the present moment and be present in living life today. Be present in noticing the interactions that you're having. Be present in noticing when people are coming in and you're seeing them laugh and giggle and the sound of a baby, and notice maybe the people that you're working with and the chaos and the arguing and the fighting that may be going on, or the misunderstandings. And you're not involved in it. You're not ensuing in it. You're not going to keep it going. You're just observing it. Be present in the little miracles that are happening and the shifts that are happening and the connections that you're making. Be present in when you're making a cup of coffee, just make that cup of coffee. When you're going to bed at night, be present in feeling the crispness of the sheets and the coolness of the sheet, and feeling the blanket on you, and feeling the noticing that, you know, where what happened during the day, and noticing that this is time that you have a bed to sleep in, where millions of people around this world don't even have a bed, right? You're noticing the present moment. You're being the observer, but nothing else. Just be the observer. So with that said, this brings us to the close of today's recording. I wish each and every one of you an amazing rest of the day. And here's to not making assumptions and standing in the truth. I'll see you guys on the other side. Bye.